Now, well, let's come to the second trumpet in verses 8 and 9. And again, I'm reading my translation. And the second angel sounded, or blew the trumpet, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was thrown or cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And there died the third of the creatures which were in the sea, even they that have life. And the third of the ships was destroyed. Now the sea, which occupies most of the earth's surface, is next affected by this direct judgment of God. And you remember again, back in Genesis, there was the separation of the land and the sea. And it occurred on the same day in which plant life appeared. And that's Genesis 1, 9, and 10. And I'll not turn back to that, by the way. Now, I want you to notice the exact language here. And that's the reason that I have given my translation, and I've attempted to lift out the literal. And I think we need to pay very careful attention to the literal language here. John does not say that a burning mountain was cast into the sea, but rather a great mass or force, as it were a great mountain, you see. As it were, a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, as it were a great mountain. Now, this careful distinction in the use of language should be noted, especially since it's the common practice to lump together everything in this book and call it symbolic, and that, of course, gets you out of a lot of trouble, but gets you out of the frying pan into the fire, by the way. The mountain represents something as literal and tangible as that we have in Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, verse 25. Now, let me go back again to the Old Testament and listen to this language. Now, he's talking here about Babylon. And notice what he says. Behold, I'm against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyeth all the earth. And I will stretch out mine hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and make thee a burnt mountain. Now, this literal mass here falls into the literal sea, and 1/3 becomes literal blood, and 1/3 of all the literal living creatures in the literal sea die a literal death. Nothing could be plainer than this. And also 1/3 of the literal ships of all literal nations are literally destroyed. Now, if we just let John say what he wants to, it makes it very clear. Now, there's no use to run and try to find some symbol that this is symbolic. Symbolic of what? Doesn't say this is symbolic. He makes it very clear that a great mass of force is put into the ocean. Now, I do not know what that could possibly be. And you say, well, why don't you know? 2 reasons. First of all, John didn't tell me, and he didn't tell anybody. And that's the reason that I don't think anyone has the answer for it. And then the second thing is, I don't expect to be here at that time, so I won't be reading the evening papers. The bad news that we get in the papers and on TV today will continue, only more so in the Great Tribulation. I won't be here to look at it. And so this, as it were, does not concern me too much, other than what an awful tragedy, because coming on a Christ-rejecting world that actually ridicules the Word of God today. And this is something that certainly makes the believer sorrowful. But it ought to do more than that. It not only ought to affect our heart, it ought to affect our wills and our feet and start us moving today to get the Word of God out. That's our responsibility. And I believe it's a very solemn responsibility that we have today. You can't keep this judgment from coming on the earth, but you can get the Word of God out and reduce the population that'll be left on the earth at that particular time. Now, we come to the third trumpet, verses 10 and 11. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters, and the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Now, I've read that in the Authorized Version. I'm going to read it now in my text. And the third angel blew the trumpet, and a great star burning as a torch fell out of heaven, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of the waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, or Absinthus. And the third part of the waters become wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Now, we're living in a world today where a great deal is being said about pollution, and it's a real problem today. Man seems to have beaten a star to polluting all the waters. Personally, I think that man is going to be forced today to clean up the water of the world if he's going to be able to exist at all. And, you know, self-preservation is considered the first law of nature, and man wants to hang on to this little earth, so he's going to do something about that. But here, in the Great Tribulation, the fresh water's polluted, and the drinking water for mankind is contaminated. That is, a third of it is. And those of us that live here in Southern California, we know something of the scarcity of fresh water for drinking and domestic use. It costs in Los Angeles, I am told, somewhere around $100 million just to turn on the spigot to get water. That's what it takes to get the water here to us. And we've had several instances in this country of drought and the difficulty of getting fresh water. That's something that is essential for man and beast. I remember in Dallas, Texas, during the drought of the 50s, the water supply of the city came from man-made lakes, and the lakes dried up. Water supply was exhausted, and it was necessary to get the water from Red River. Now, the oil companies had let drain salt water